She is. Here's our girl.
Hi, sorry. You know what? He went to spam. Sorry, Joe Bob. Joe Boy. Sorry.
Like Joe Bob works too. Joe Bob works.
Wow. Wow.
Got a good little,
I am
got a good little
considered
group coming here.
spam now.
For you, it's nothing but love.
Wow,
I
you got a lot of folks coming
am
on here, man.
Jimmy Joe Bob. What is this? The Waltons?
Oh
So
no,
real
don't.
quick, say this topic isn't about racism as much as the cultural trend of seeing racism where it doesn't exist as a greater problem than racism.
I got it.
That
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think is the issue.
So we'll see. Yeah. Well, we'll start you out, Ted, since you picked this topic. We'll start you
Yes.
out to make your opening points.
Okay, we have a halfway decent.
But
gallery.
yeah, I think we're gonna.
We got-
I'm
we
gonna
got
go
a-
back
got
to
a
the
decent-
Harpers though for some more
We
stuff.
got a decent gallery too.
We actually have
Hello,
some people in the
everybody.
gallery. Not a whole lot of people on video, but we got some gallery people. That's good.
Everybody on
If
the
you
gallery.
can, turn your phone sideways. That would be helpful.
Everybody on the gallery, make sure you got your microphones on. Looks pretty good. Cameras on. Somebody, it's
Hey, Tiberius, we're
that
almost ready.
can you turn your camera on? And somebody's on the iPhone. Who's the iPhone person?
We have to go grab
Turn your
Tiberius.
camera on.
I get it.
Not me.
How you doing, Michelle?
That would
I'm
be
good.
me.
Yeah.
Oh boy, how do you handle the 95 and 45% humidity? How do you handle that?
I shower every day.
You shower by walking to your car.
That's just it was awful.
Hey,
My
Michelle,
car
you were going to reach out to me. I never heard from you, baby.
I have
I
a black
did it.
car. It gets hot just by touching it and sitting in it.
But I did.
Yeah, I know.
No,
Michelle, you
didn't.
need to lower down the camera angle.
Lower it down.
Yeah,
There you go.
There you go.
because again, put your hand over your head. We got like 5 inches above your head. We got to get it lower.
Are you the iPhone?
Get off my
We're not
foot
aiming for a chest shot, but we really want to
I
get you in the center of it.
And make it where you guys don't.
We don't need your
press in
ceiling.
the back.
When
Yeah,
does,
but look, the ceiling fan isn't fun.
Bob said that Jeffrey Tubin was
It's
going
not-
to.
well, you're looking at Larry's ceiling fan.
Jeffrey Tubin.
And John, same thing with you. If you can lower your camera down so that you have, if you do this, see how far, there you go. And now a little bit taller because we still want to get your head in it.
Jeffrey Tubin.
There you go.
There.
Perfect. So for that, Mr. Tiberius,
Oh yeah.
Is that you?
check that the
Who's the
thing is
iPhone
working.
person?
I have a good ear.
The
Ken's,
mouse is working. And
Ken's
then you're able to
iPad
click on
has got the noise.
Here, I'll give you Michelle. See,
Okay.
see if Michelle's timer works.
The
Right,
word
anybody in the
hello.
gallery,
Guest one is Michelle.
you could turn your camera on.
Oh, well,
If
she's
you
talking
wanna
while I'm
see,
this.
you
Might
can
as
mute
well-
it.
I know.
Have
I
your
do have
camera
my
on so
on.
you
You
can
guys
see.
need to catch that.
Steve Johnson.
You're not looking at the thing there?
Okay, Tiberius, what are you talking about?
Somebody has their TV on in the background. Who's that?
That's Ken's iPad.
All right, you got to turn that down.
Well, that means I can't see the
and
people.
20% off treatment plans for
Okay.
everyone.
All right, somebody has a. Who's
I
that?
hope Dawn is recording. But here you go. But I mean, I can't see people.
Visit your
I'll have to
Hey,
see.
Joe.
Yeah, it's still Ken's iPad.
Millions of Floridians use
Right there.
marijuana.
Okay.
It's a fact.
It's recording.
Who's
Most
that?
Americans have access
The
to
moderator should be able to mute
Now, can
that.
you check her
We're
with
trying to
her
figure who it is.
Michelle talking and click on her
Most
stuff?
marijuana.
If you're the moderator, if you're the co-host,
Like good to go?
John,
Now we
I'm
got,
trying to see
Ken
who's
and
that
me,
is. I
use
can't
Ken's
see.
iPad.
yeah,
Ted talking where?
Yeah, there you
What
go.
head is that?
there his
Ted
numbers.
talking
There we
where?
go.
I like
About
TED
Larry
Talks.
talking.
Yeah, I like TED Talks. That's
Well,
pretty
Okay, there
Larry's
you go.
numbers
Somebody
working,
got it
his
off now.
working. Okay. And then Johnny, is his numbers working? His numbers are working. Okay.
Yes.
There you go. We got all the numbers working. We are going to go ahead and fade to black.
Are we?
Are you ready, Tiberius? You got everything reset to 0?
Are they gonna be starting to show you guys? Now remember, you guys can make quick
More or
comments.
less. Let's do it.
Quick comments like that sucks. Just quick comments you can make, and
Oh.
feel free to jump in.
You want me to do that?
Keep it short.
Then turn there. And that way I can.
Those
I can
all on
time
the-
everything right.
in the peanut gallery. So
Okay.
you can make quick comments, and then when
And
we
your
go to
timer's
commercials,
on.
you got like 30 seconds to make a point.
Audio timer is getting set in 5,
Okay?
4,
Don, who is
3.
the iPhone 147?
I'm trying to figure out who that is.
You can mute them.
Welcome to the Third Side Convo with your host, Bob Phipps. Your panelists today are Michelle Walters, Ted Johnson, Lawrence Haber, and Johnny Dunn. And now, your host, Bob Phipps.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Third Side Convo. You know, where we dive into complex and often controversial issues shaping our society. Today, we're tackling a topic that's as divisive as it is important, the perception of racism. A recent survey found that 45% of Americans believe that seeing racism where it isn't is worse than missing it where it is. Now, this statistic reveals a deep divide, which we already know, in how we view and address racial issues in our country. On one side, there's a concern that overzealous accusations of racism can lead to unnecessary division and undermine genuine cases of discrimination and create a culture of fear and defensiveness. On the other side, there's a fear that failing to acknowledge and address subtle and systemic forms of racism perpetuates inequality and injustice. In today's episodes, we'll explore both perspectives. We're going to discuss examples from both political spectrums, how Democrats and Republicans may perceive and sometimes misinterpret actions of racists as racist, the impact of these perceptions on public discourse, and the consequences for social cohesion and justice. We're going to hear from everyday citizens about their experiences and views. Now, our goal here is to better understand others and to find common ground where possible. You know, too often we write off the other side as evil or ignorant. We all need to do a better job of listening to attempt to see the other's concerns. How do we strike a balance between being vigilant against racism, ensuring that we don't see it where it doesn't exist? What can we learn from those instances? And how can we foster a more nuanced and productive conversation about race in America? Stay tuned as we dive into these questions and on today's episode of Third Side Convo. After the break, we will get into our discussion.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop.
Okay, there's
for all your cigar
somebody's.
needs, whether
Okay,
that's
you guys can
brand
make
new
comments. I got like 30 seconds during the
cigar
commercial.
you've been waiting for.
A
top of the line cutter.
Feel
Hey,
free to
Don, if
jump
you have
in.
anybody that's making noise, their name will come up and you can mute them because you're the host.
Yeah.
In the Sunshine State.
So
We've got you
Ken's
covered.
iPad needs to be
Come
muted.
Visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience.
Is that
Visit us
Jeff?
online.
Ken's iPad.
You
Go
hear
down
me?
to the go down to the bottom where you see participants and click on participants. And you'll see all 16 people. And you can mute them.
Yeah, she's on mute already. No, it's
Who, Ken?
Yeah.
No, Ken's iPad is not on mute.
For gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service. And firearm safety is what they do
When
best.
somebody makes a noise, they come up to the top. That's another way to tell.
Now, welcome back. Now, Ted Johnson, who's out in San Francisco, a former journalist, or actually still a journalist, he can certainly write some killer emails. Let me tell you, if you ask him a question or you challenge him at all, Ted is going to come back with the facts. And that's the greatest thing of what I've learned about doing this show is it is forcing me to listen to all sides. And so, Ted, where'd you get this from? And then give us a quick, what's your opening statement to the whole issue of racism? Because obviously it's a divisive topic.
Yes, well, thank you, Bob. Again, this comes from Harper's Magazine, one of the oldest magazines in the country. Goes back 150 years, run by the MacArthur Foundation now. But this every month they have one page of 28 facts gleaned from research think tanks, Gallup polls, other things, other events, and it's a fascinating look, one-page look on major cultural and political issues. And this one popped up. Nearly half the country think that seeing racism where it isn't is worse than racism itself. And I think that came up a little bit as one example. Immediately after Black Lives Matter, I heard of stories in the South particularly, but other places of white men walking into Starbucks and other places proudly brandishing firearms in their arms, over their shoulder, on their belts, as a statement of something that a reaction to a case of, a case of injustice in terms.
But that's probably
of
on
what
the
happened.
extremes. So we're not
Yes.
necessarily wanting to be on the extremes here, Ted. What we're trying to say is this 45%, that's a big number. And that's why you struck out to bring this subject today, didn't
That's
you?
right.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
All right, Larry,
What do you guys
what
say
did you
about
think?
that?
I mean, you're the one that said, okay, let's do this thing. And I'm sitting here going, are we crazy? How can, ordinary citizens talk about racism?
Well, one of the things we have to address is how people react to other people. And in our case, there's lots of times when people will call somebody racist when it doesn't mean that they're racist, but it's an easy thing to use and it's an easy thing to throw
Are
out.
they making
at
good
people.
points, you guys?
Where I'm coming from is obvious
Yeah, that's the
racism
way to shut down the
is
debate.
different than perceived racism. And a lot of perceived racism is not really racism, it's just called that. From my end of things, I happen to be Jewish, and I think there's more racism now at Jewish people than there are people of color. So if we're going to tackle racism, I'd like to tackle racism in a bigger picture, not just saying that somebody is of color and therefore anybody else has to be racist.
Yeah, because
Good
racism
point.
goes on across the world.
I was just talking
Michelle,
about that.
give me your opening statement.
My opening statement, though, is, with regards to racism, it goes across everybody. It goes across, race, religion, sexual orientation. Racism is racism. But with regards to perception of racism compared to actual racism, I think the perception of it it just gets a lot more media attention. It gets a lot more glorification in the news of the woman thinking that she's being attacked in New York by a black man when actually he's just watching, bird watching or something like that. She had a perception of this. It gets glorified compared to the actual racism that actually exists in this country, which is 10 times worse. And with regards to the Jewish community, nobody's been persecuted more.
Gotcha.
Good
Hey,
point.
Johnny, social media have anything to do with this?
Bob, you got to know your audience. I am not on social media, so I know nothing about social media. But what I do know is this. Albert, look, here's the deal. Every human being has an internal narrative. And whatever the narrative is in their brain is exactly what is going to come true. And if people in this world ever want to have a truly healthy internal narrative, they're going to go on the most important diet they've ever been on in their lives. And that is anyone and anything that is divisive. Albert Einstein once said, if you believe you live in a loving world, you're going to find a loving world. If you believe you live in a hostile world, you're going to find you live in a hostile world. And I always think about what Morgan Freeman said to Mike Wallace on that famous interview. If we really want racism to go away, we simply need to stop talking about it.
Amen.
Well, it's
Ted.
a little bit further than that.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that, but the perception issue, I think, stems from something that's kind of come up in our culture a little bit more. People tend to fall into victimization, that they're a victim of something, and as opposed to being stand up. I think the Karen memes we all hear of, the woman screaming in the Target parking lot over some perceived problem, the woman saying who won't put away her shopping cart in the parking lot. She can't stand to leave her kids in the car alone for 7 seconds. She has to walk 15 feet, put a cart back in where they belong. And things like that are a sense of the cultural change. Everyone many people feel wronged about something. And I wonder why that is.
Okay.
Why would people feel
Michelle,
bad about that?
I just think
guys-
that
What
unfortunately,
do you guys
it
think about
takes
that
into
one?
account. I think the social
Anybody?
media, I think the news plays a big part of this. With regards to, I believe, in my opinion, they place a lot of division. They highlight the conflicts, the differences. They show much more of the riots compared to the people out there, just the normal great people out that are really trying to sit there and that go across lines, that, you know, it doesn't make a difference what nationality, whatever it might be, that they're of assistance to people. We don't see that. We just don't. All we see is the negative, which only fosters and infiltrates it further.
Hey, Larry, why if you know, if a black kills a black or a white kills a white or whatever, that's not news? I mean, are they trying to divide us, Larry?
The media will do what it does best for its own sake, which is not necessarily the public interest. So without getting into that, should be a show in and of itself. But in terms of racism in general, I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. And I think it gets better over time. And I think in this country it has. But I think that in certain areas it has gotten worse. The example I gave earlier. But in general, I think people are more tolerant. I see people all over. We live in the South. I don't see racism. I mean, I talk to people all the time. I have clients. I have, black, white, green. I have them all, literally. And I've never heard anybody raise a racist point. But if somebody feels they're being slighted, then they feel that it's racism. That's what we have to get away from.
I couldn't agree with him more.
I mean, it's one of those where I have to admit, though, I mean, and I completely disagree with that. You know, I'm coming from California, and they are, I think they're way more multicultural over there, to where you're not necessarily going to see it. But here in Florida, which I consider still more of a liberal South, no, I mean, absolutely, without a doubt, it's not necessarily just people stating racism. You actually feel it. You know what I mean? Me, like I said, as a black female, I feel it. There are, certain situations, if I walk into a store where people will sit there and let's say if I go to a high-end mall, walk into a high-end, designer store, I'm looked at much differently compared to a white woman the same, or any other woman that might be, of the same age, maybe build, whatever the case might be, and much more attention is placed on me, so compared to somebody else.
I don't know
So
if
I
you
mean,
know,
in
but,
my opinion,
I
I do agree with you, though. I mean, we've made huge
infinitely worse.
strides. We've had a black president, absolutely, but we have a long ways to go.
All right. Well, that's good for an
make a
opening
good
start.
point there.
We'll hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Wow.
Okay, you guys, a lot of you guys are new to the gallery. We don't see you on video. We can't see you. We can't hear you. So you can make a point. You can make a quick point. We're trying to get more people to participate. If you hear something that you don't like, or hear something and say, "Oh, that's a bad point. I don't agree with that," you can make a quick comment. So don't sit there and just listen. You can actually participate if you want. Okay.
I was going to comment on the young lady who just spoke. I'm a child of the 50s and 60s, late 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I can tell you unequivocally, having studied the Civil Rights Act of 64 and all that, here we are 60 years later, things have improved tremendously. Are they perfect? No. But they've improved tremendously versus where it was before. Would
you say it's better than it was in the
1990s?
Yeah, I would tell you this, Steve. The victimhood is what's strong. And when someone feels they're a victim,
all right,
there's not a damn thing you can do.
Well, actually, we talked about this. I guess we've got to have, are there some instances? I guess those on the right. Johnny, did you read into this at all? Are there any instances of things whereby the perception is greater than the racism itself? What examples did you see in preparing for this show?
Well, look, that's half the problem with humanity. Everyone in this world is largely walking around operating from a sense of perception. And everyone thinks their perception is the correct perception. Everyone thinks the story in their head is the right story. And all that ever does is get human beings in trouble, because whose story is the right story? Whose story is the wrong story? Well, as fate would have it, if we ever want to truly adapt as a society, we'll do something that very few are doing, and they're operating from empathy. But as long as people operate from the story in their head, things are never going to turn around. But I do want to say a quote that was always one of my favorites, that racism is not dead, but it is on life support, and it's only being kept alive by politicians, race hustlers, and people who get superiority by calling other people racist. It couldn't be any more true. My mother told me when I was a kid, there's good white people, there's bad white people. There's good Chinese people, there's bad Chinese people. There's good African-American people, there's bad African-American people. But if we start blanket stereotyping people, what the hell good does that serve anybody at all?
Hey, Ted, you want to can you respond to that, Ted? Or you were shaking your head. I couldn't imagine. Was that agreeing with him, or is that Johnny being Johnny? What was that?
Johnny being Johnny. First one, everyone, he said, has a story in their head, and only that story is only right. That's so wrong. I mean, as a journalist, you're trained to be skeptical. Do people really feel this way? That's why you ask. I ask myself the same way. What is the issue about this feeling that I'm having? Come on, Johnny, you don't put everyone in that bucket. That's extreme.
Okay, vast majority then, but people are
operating.
that
now. So what are we talking? We want to negotiate down to what? 89 to 72%?
Well, look,
87%. Everyone in every situation does that.
Why is that?
That's not the case.
Yeah, you're pulling numbers out of your butt.
We all knew which side of the aisle you would fall in because, if your side can't be the hero to that side, then my guess is they're going to lose about 25% of their voting block. So you got to keep the racism alive.
What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. Again.
Let's get back to the
back on topic. Yeah.
Let's get back on topic.
Yeah.
Racism exists. I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm not saying that it doesn't for Michelle. Obviously it does. My point is simply that I think it's getting better and has gotten better. We're not in the 1950s or even the 1960s anymore. We keep working to do that. But today's politics is to make everything about race. And that puts divisions up, and that's what I have a problem with.
But Lawrence, real quick, being Jewish, I think you have to respond to the fact that the war in Gaza has inspired a lot of anti-Semitism, and it's been there, and now it's kind of risen up in the top on a new wave of all because people tend to be pro-Palestinian for whatever reason. But again, it comes up in a different situation, but it's still the same issue.
Yes. Okay, but what's the point there, Ted? Sorry.
The fact of the matter is racism does exist, but it comes at different angles and at different incidences. Excuse me.
Well, I totally agree with that, but part of the discussion here is racism, when people say 45%, the survey says that people aren't being racist when they think other people think they are. I think that's a function of our politics and our media today. And I think it's also a knee-jerk reaction by people to just say, if I don't like something, well, you're racist.
Yeah.
I don't know how often,
I absolutely agree. It's a cultural trend that I think does, obviously fed by the media, but it's a cultural trend that emanates from a lot of different areas and sources.
We need to work on lessening that because it is dividing us, and that is one of the things that divides us as a society.
And I think it gets back to Johnny's point. Not everyone has this perception in their head. They have to check that and saying, I may be wrong on this. Maybe I should listen to someone else about the issue. That's my point to Johnny.
Well, Johnny, you've just been admonished. You better get up there,
man. It just doesn't happen enough is the problem. Everyone's just rolling around operating from perception. I suggested to do exactly what you just said. And start operating from a place of empathy and putting yourself into the shoes of the other person, Ted. So thank you for validating exactly what I said.
There you go. Empathy. I call it being curious more than empathy. But that's fine. That's fine. Michelle, what do you say?
I was going to say, I think it's difficult for people to sit there and have empathy. But the whole purpose of the show is trying to sit there and, being able to sit and come to the middle and try to be able to sit and find solutions. And it seems like, I know we've dabbled, it seems like a bit much, on politics and different people and trying to polarize, both opposite ends. But it's a matter of, how can we, as a society, try to enforce or encourage, trying to bring unification. How can we do that? How can we try, to bridge this gap of, stop keeping us apart. How can we bridge ourselves together?
For your question.
And I think that needs to be the bigger picture here.
What if we had some type of a podcast where people actually were? Oh shit, we are. Okay. I mean, because look,
You can swear on this podcast, I guess.
Hey, listen, I was texting with an attorney before the show, and the attorney basically said, well, there's that 45%, screw them, they don't matter anyway. And that's the way I took it. And I know that's not what he said, but it just continually drives me nuts when everybody wants to just throw off the other side without recognizing that there's some valid points. Now, we're not talking about many of those things that we could talk about now, but we're talking about what we are talking about, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine. We're getting Ted and Johnny together. Hell, if we can get Ted and Johnny together, we can change the world.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you.
Well, there's a great essay
By the
by.
way, people watching
I'm
this.
sorry. Go ahead, Johnny.
No, I love Ted, and he's opened my eyes to some stuff for sure. But I think we also need to do what Morgan Freeman said as well in that interview.
Great. What do you got to
Quit
say?
calling people black people. Quit calling people white people. Quit calling people Chinese people, because they're all just labels at the end of the day, and none of that shit even matters. Sorry, none of that even matters. Who people really are is what is going to ultimately be written on their tombstone, and it's not relegated to the color of their skin. I mean,
Yeah, but all
it's
California
nonsensical.
people are California people.
That's awful
That doesn't
with somebody
Ted is
as beloved
the
and
epitome
wealthy
of California.
as Morgan
And
Freeman.
lots of people from California are like Ted. We just have to work through that. That's all.
Wow, another pigeonhole. I
Wow,
get
they
slammed
are
into. That's
picking on
great.
you,
Okay.
California
My
racism.
dad taught me a long time ago, Lawrence and Johnny. My dad taught me long ago. We're watching baseball, and there was a ground ball, and I said, "That's the black first baseman." And my dad says, "How often do you say that's the white first baseman?" And back to Johnny's point, they're people. People are people. They come in different ways, many colors, issues, ethnicities, on and on. They're just people. They're not.
Exactly.
That's all it is.
It's just a description. Sometimes it's just, you know what I mean? It just
Got it.
Yeah, there's no need to label.
Well, it's just
Like,
it's
oh,
fine.
California.
That's what ruins everything. We want to label things so
iPhone
we can control them.
147
All right,
No,
are we
it's
gonna,
simple.
The
Let me ask
Simplify.
this: how do you get people
In the peanut
to
gallery.
stop saying everything is racist when not everything is racist?
Well,
How
no,
do you
I mean-
change that paradigm?
You can't decide who called people super predators and said, don't want to have a racial jungle. You can't get them to stop doing it because they don't want to lose a large segment of their voting base that they tell to be victims, even though 75% of the world we live in has been traumatized in their own right.
all right. Well, on that, we're going to take our next commercial break. We will be right back with some more excitement.
Corona Cigar Company.
Okay,
is your one-
guys, the rules of the peanut gallery. You can speak a quick comment. Now, right now, it's a minute going on. We got like a minute to say some stuff, but we need people to interact. 147, we can't hear you. Your camera is jumping up and down, so we can't keep you on camera.
Come visit one of our retail
I can hear her.
locations for the
Hey,
ultimate
this
cigar
is-
experience.
This is iPhone 147. It's Connie.
At Corona Cigar
Yeah,
Company.
Connie. Yeah, your camera's jumping up and down, so we can't get a full picture of you.
That's because she's driving.
I know. I'm driving. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm
what do you
trying
got
to
to say real quick?
multitask without crashing.
What do
Okay,
you gotta
real
say real
quick. I
quick?
think a lot of racism. All right, listen. I think a lot of racism happens in our prisons. We have loved ones. We have people who go in, make a mistake, and yet they are ostracized. They cannot have a normal life for the rest of their life. And we look down upon them because they
Here we
did
are. You know,
something
there's a
wrong. There's
movie
something that we
Bullworth. I don't
should
know if some of
engulf
y'all
our
have
loved
seen
ones
it,
coming
but
back into
you know, Warren
society
Beatty
because,
is talking
you
to
know,
this
in the
crowd,
military
and
and
he's
some, we're
running
gonna
for
need those
senator, and he's just talking about the fact because he's just totally gone off, and he's like, "Look, we just basically, well, I don't want to use the word, but we basically, if everybody would just screw everybody, then we'll all be the same color." And it really would be nice because I think everybody sees it. You know, the concept of colorblind, you can't even use that anymore, Johnny. It's not allowed. It's been taken over. But I understand that. It is hard. You know, we're a country that is different. But if you go to other countries, there is an equal amount of racism in other countries. So this is not just a U.S. thing, and I think maybe that's the only thing that ever gets to me is it's a U.S. thing. Oh my gosh, Miss Agnes, travel to some other countries. Anybody been outside? Ted, you've been to any other countries?
South Africa, Australia, France, Italy, Germany, Norway.
You know what I mean?
Mexico.
Yeah.
I did
So,
business in South
I think
Africa.
There's a lot of
It's-
racism in Antarctica,
They still
Bob.
have-
Just, you know.
Tons. Those penguins, those those big penguins, they have a
Yeah,
problem
I mean,
with the
they're
little
I
guys.
don't like
so-
Yeah.
the smaller penguins, or maybe.
But
the
you know,
white
Bob, I
ones.
think it points out to something that David Foster Wallace speaks about in a great essay called "This Is Water," and it urges us to be more aware of the world around us and choose how we perceive and respond to everyday challenges. And the overall purpose of higher education is to learn to consciously choose how to perceive others, thinking about meaning and act appropriately in everyday life.
Okay.
And that speaks to what Johnny mentioned earlier, but I think everyone has that obligation. Now, one last thing, I know this is long, but I remember the ABC commentator talking about America, U.S. He says we're a fat, sassy, lazy country. All we want is our football, we want our NASCAR, and we want our fast food. And everything else outside of that, we don't care. Now, it was obviously an oversimplification, but there's a lot of truth in the fact that people don't have any curiosity to have enough empathy to learn about others. There you go.
Well, I guess is it a fair point? Let's say the ones on the left, we'll start with you, Michelle. Michelle,
Yes.
do you see any of that 45% actually? And now, obviously, the fact they said it's worse than racism, they can't say that to you because you've actually gone through it. But do you understand how some people think we've gone too far, that we see it where it doesn't exist? Can you see that?
Absolutely. I mean, no, I
Okay.
do. I mean, absolutely. And I think that even with regards to, and like, I think it's highlighted over social media, especially
Right.
the invention of TikTok and Instagram and all of these short little things, to where any of these instances that pop up, they're glorified and these videos go viral. And so, and it's just amazing though on how it's so divisive. And so, I mean, it's sensationalized to be able to watch it, but at the end of the day, it's really sad. It's sad, and it's, it's another black mark that with regards to our culture, that you feel that you're entitled to treat or talk or behave to another individual that lives here.
But Ted knows that, journalism runs on clickbaits, and clickbaits only works if it's going to click it. So, I mean, we're almost like,
It's not journalism, Bob. That's social media trying for clicks. It's called capitalism.
oh, I thought you were concerned about if people read your articles back in the past. You weren't concerned. You only wanted what was said. Larry, do you think that how can we come out of this? I mean, you understand maybe you understand the 45% and the 55%, right?
The only way you get out of it is a change in attitude, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do to get the media to not focus on that at this point in time. So in terms of an answer, I really don't know how to stop what's happening, because it sells and it brings dollars into their door.
What if is there any way we can talk about it such that people are like prepared for it and just recognize it? I mean, that's what I'm always saying is I love to look at headlines on both sides about the same issue, and you're like, they're certainly not talking about the same issue based on those headlines.
Correct. I love the topic. I don't have an answer. Usually I can jump in and say, this is how we're going to take care of it. I don't know how you change people's attitudes at this particular moment in time when it's worth too much money to people to keep using it.
Right.
The good thing is I mean, with regards to the society that we live in today, it's so multicultural. I mean, it's much more prevalent today of interracial relationships, in religions, whatever the case might be, acceptance of everybody from, all these various different designations of, homosexuality and all the rest of I don't even know the rest of the designations. But I just think, though, that the younger generation, we're becoming much more accepting of everybody, to where, you know what I mean, the individual racism, I do believe that it is going down. And a lot of times now they're able to sit there and put much more of a highlight, like, oh, that's a Karen.
And that's kind of what Larry's saying, is it's getting better, but if you actually watch social media, it's getting worse. Johnny, you don't want social media, and it's up to the individual, don't you think?
Look, I go back to what C.S. Lewis, I think he wrote it, Ted could probably correct me on this, back in the 1930s when he wrote the Screw Tape Letters. And it was the senior devil talking to the junior devil, trying to get him to come up with a complex plan to corrupt society. And the senior devil said to the junior devil, you're making things too difficult. Just create a bunch of noise in the world and we will win. And what are we witnessing today? Back to Ted's point, football, NASCAR, baseball, sports, TikTok. Until people learn to turn off the noise, to mention what Larry said, It's not going to change. Until
I have
people
a
are willing to
solution.
step away from all the noise, it's never going to change.
I have a solution.
Anybody here lived in Japan? Because I have.
Okay, it's going to go over there. It goes like this.
Makes
Google and Facebook and all these other places.
Well, you
put
got
up
15
billions of
seconds, Ted. Make it quick.
Never
pays for
happened.
local newspapers, pays for local newspapers in the community. Facebook, Google, all these places, billions of dollars. It's a foundation. They use it as a tax write-off, and these won't go out of business. Therefore, they don't have to do sensationalist headlines or clickbait issues. They just have to get
Got it.
information.
All
They're
right.
guaranteed.
That's a good point.
So you're saying we need to build more of a community, aren't we? So we're building a
Through local
community
press.
here, 4 people at a time. We got people on the peanut gallery. They probably went nuts on this topic. I am so happy we were able to talk about it, and we will see you on the flip side of Third Side Convo next week. Thank you much.
Wow.
Don.